What's up, everyone? Brady Fugel here, coming at you with my very first album review of this year, of 2024. Today it's going to be the new New Year's Day album titled Half Black Heart, which came out about 2 weeks ago, March 1st. New Year's Day was one of those female-fronted rock bands that really gained prominence in like the 20 teens about 10 years ago, along with bands like, Hailstorm and This Moment, Stitched Up Heart, just to name a few. And for me, the best way I can describe this band is a band that has had a few decent songs throughout their career, but consistently falls into that trap that, in my opinion, a lot of specifically female-fronted rock and metal bands fall into, which is just putting the vocalist at the forefront of everything, and as a result, kind of having some bland music. They have also pretty much established themselves as one of the newer butt rock bands of the last 10 years. Which, again, is a group of bands as a whole that I have been having a very hard time getting into. And that's simply because of the generic nature of this music as a whole. And I'm not bashing the whole butt rock or, active rock, as they call it, genre, because I'm a big fan of bands like 3 Days Grace, Breaking Benjamin, Shinedown, Disturbed, bands from, I guess, the early 2000s that kind of invented that genre, but at least kind of kept it interesting and kept it diverse. And many of the bands that kind of follow in their footsteps now and have came out since then just haven't had that same charisma or uniqueness to them. But when a band like this does come out with a new album, it really makes it stand out. So the question here is, can New Year's Day use their position in this genre to their advantage and come out with a genuinely interesting album that separates themselves from the other bands? And right off the bat, I could tell you one thing that immediately worried me about this album was the actual titles of the songs. Because at least half of the album has these song titles that are just blatantly basic, and I feel like I can name multiple songs from, I guess, the butt rock genre that have either the same or very similar titles. I'm talking Fearless, Bulletproof, Enemy, Burn It All Down, Hurts Like Hell, So Sick. So, obviously you can't judge a song just by its title, but immediately this had me worried for the album. And after getting through tracks 1 through 4, you can immediately kind of pick up that this album has very similar formulas, especially for the heavier tracks. That formula being starting out with a decently interesting, catchy, or hooky riff, but then transitioning into verses that kind of immediately kill the instrumental momentum in favor of, emphasizing the vocals. These verses then transition into a very larger-than-life traditional hard rock chorus with lead singer Ash Costello really getting into the higher vocal range. And, this is a basic formula for a rock song, but it doesn't really become a problem until it's done repeatedly over and over. And unfortunately, this album does just that. It has pretty much all of its heavy songs following the exact same structure and formula. I'm talking pretty much the full first 4 songs all in a row. Also, Enemy, I Still Believe, So Sick. There's a serious lack of diversity in the structures of the heavy songs in particular. And so far, these songs are perfect examples of the criticism I give to these female-fronted rock bands that I was talking about earlier, where the music kind of takes a backseat to the vocals, and as a result, it kind of just ends up being boring. Take songs like the title track and Enemy, which open with some pretty cool sounding riffs, but then they kind of take that backseat role, and it makes me question why. Why are they doing that? Why does it sound like the band just either can't or doesn't want to keep that instrumental momentum pushing forward? Why does it sound as if they aren't able to make instrumental music that does something beyond just emphasize the vocals? Because aside from the album opener Vampyres, which I'll talk about more later, all of these heavy songs on here, the instrumental parts beneath the vocals really sound like they have nothing going on. And the lighter, slower songs on here aren't much better. Fearless, Creature of Habit, and Unbreak My Heart all, again, have very similar sounding song formulas. They start with a piano or a symphonic section and then have some electronic build-up parts before going into another full sounding hard rock chorus. Which, again, not a problematic formula until it's done repeatedly throughout the entire album. When you have a 12-track album that really only has 2 different song formulas, which aren't really a whole lot different from each other in the first place, it becomes a very problematic factor in the enjoyment of this album. And this is just the song formulas as a whole, and I haven't even really talked about the actual content of the songs and what's being played. Because there are several songs on here that are corny, insufferable, and barely listenable. The most egregious offender for me is the song Hurts Like Hell, which is just the embodiment of butt rock, and exactly everything that I was afraid I would hear on this album. It has that really boring bump bump style riff to open the song, and it has some of the most painfully generic lyrics of the whole album, which is another recurring theme that I will talk about later. So Sick is another song that is just straight up butt rock. I Still Believe has those extremely corny whoa vocals, which I can't stand ever. And a lot of the hooks in these choruses end up kind of just being repeating the same phrase over and over. I'm talking Vampyre, I'm talking Fearless. Where are the dynamics? Where is the ambition? This album does not feel like it is trying anything new. And it's especially frustrating when you get these genuinely cool sounding riffs and interesting parts that are just instantly killed off in favor of promoting the vocals. And just to be clear, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Ash Costello's vocals. She honestly sounds really good on this album as a performer. But for the most part, the band kind of just sounds like they're going through the motions with these instruments. The only real exception to this is the opening track, Vampyre. I think that song is full of dynamics and actually kind of maintains the momentum throughout the entire song instrumentally. Enemy and Secrets both again have some interesting riffs to open the song, and I just wish there was more of that throughout the whole song. And my favorite song on the album is probably the track Bulletproof, as it actually is climactic and it kind of goes somewhere the whole song. And I say that despite the song having some of those similar formulas as the other songs I've talked about. So this goes to show that they can at least take these song formulas that are basic in nature and at least make them somewhat interesting. But by far the worst aspect of this album is the fucking lyrics. These lyrical themes are corny, seriously lacking in diversity, generic, and outdated. You can listen to literally the entire album and find 2 different lyrical themes. These lyrical themes are something of the nature of either, you can't tell me what to do, you're not the boss of me, or they are, I'm fucked up in the head, but I don't mind it. I'm okay. I like myself like this. Which are 2 lyrical themes that are just so overused in this genre of music. They're so surface level, uninspired, and just do not sound like they're actually trying to say anything. So that, along with the equally dull music for the majority of the album, really hurts my listen of it. And I was really hoping that they would kind of reject my preconceived notion of what this album was going to be purely on something like the titles of the songs. Like, listen to the Spirit Box record or the Dying Wish record that dropped last year, both of which are from female-fronted bands, and both of which were phenomenal. I know those bands are both a bit heavier, but listen to Evanescence's third album. They're self-titled. You listen to any of those albums back-to-back with this album, and you will see the difference. You'll see that, by comparison, this album is just boring. It's generic. It has not much going on to it. Like, I feel like if I was the musicians in this band, I would be bored playing these songs live. And you can't help but wonder if maybe that's the reason why when you go to Wikipedia for this band's page, you will see such a long list of former band members. But, okay, I know I've kind of torn this album apart a little bit, but there are some redeemable qualities of it. I've already singled out Bulletproof as probably my favorite song of the album, and it has some decent lyrics aside from the whole, actual bulletproof part of the lyrics. And there's several cool parts to this album. Specifically, I really like the riff to the song Vampyre, like I mentioned earlier. It kind of sounds like something the band 12 Foot Ninja would do. And as a fan of that band, I thought that was pretty cool. And again, that song does a good job of actually maintaining the momentum established by that opening riff, which honestly none of the other songs do. None of the other heavy songs, at least. And at the end of the day, this isn't a terrible album. I mean, a lot of the error of this album is kind of from a songwriting perspective and not a performance one. Because again, I think the vocals are performed really well, and some of the instrumental sections that don't just promote the vocals themselves sound really good. I just wish that these 2 aspects can coexist at the same time, because I feel like the music would be way better. This album gets a 12 out of 30 for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I will see you guys very soon for another album review. And feel free to subscribe to my channel for more rock and metal related content. Peace.